Factory closures across 5 states, over 2,000 workers sent home, a 90-year-old boat brand sold off for scrap, and $730 million in losses across just 3 public companies. The American boat industry just posted its worst numbers since the 2008 money crisis, and the 7 brands we are about to cover are all running out of time. Some of these companies cut their workers in half. Others shut down plants for good that had been open for decades. One sold every mold, every tool, and every design it owned for $6 million. New powerboat sales dropped 9.1% in 2024 to just 231,576 units, and through July of 2025, they fell another 8.9%. Brunswick's CEO compared the current market to 2010, which was the lowest point after the last money crisis. When the largest boat company on the planet makes that comparison, it is not spin, it is a warning. Type by type, the pain looks even worse. Pontoons dropped 10.9% through June 2025, stern drives fell 20.1%, wake sport boats slid 9.9%, and jet boats dropped 14.4%. Yachts were the only bright spot at 1.8% growth because buyers spending $500,000 on a boat are not borrowing money to do it. With that as the backdrop, here are the 7 brands bleeding out right now. Mercury Marine, Brunswick's engine division based in Fond du Lac, Wisconsin, cut 300 workers for good in June of 2024. 1 month later, 1,700 hourly workers started rotating week-long time-offs, which shut down most of the plant's crew within 6 weeks. St. Cloud, Florida, and Juarez, Mexico operations were also pulled back, bringing the total number of workers hit to roughly 2,000 at a single division. Brunswick's full year 2024 numbers tell the rest of the story. Revenue fell 18.2% to $5.24 billion, adjusted earnings per share dropped 48% to $4.57, and net income crashed 66% to $149 million. The stock bottomed at $41. Mercury is not going to vanish. It is still the largest boat engine maker on Earth, but sending 1,700 workers home at once is the kind of move that tells you how empty the order book really got. Next is BassPro's White River Marine Group, the factory arm behind Tracker, Ranger, Nitro, Sun Tracker, Mako, and Tahoe, and this is where the cutbacks turned harsh. April 2024 saw 176 workers cut across plants in Lebanon, Missouri, Flippin, Arkansas, and Bolivar, Missouri. By August, another 100 jobs were gone. November brought the hardest hit when BassPro closed the Miami, Oklahoma factory for good and wiped out 148 jobs, then folded the Bolivar plant into Lebanon and cut 81 more. Over 500 workers lost their jobs in a single year across 6 brands, all blamed on rising prices and a sharp jump in interest rates. That is corporate talk, for the boats are not moving. Alumacraft, owned by Canadian parent BRP, the same company behind Sea-Doo, took 298 permanent cuts at BRP's Sturtevant, Wisconsin Marine headquarters across March and May of 2024. The damage at the Alumacraft plant in St. Peter, Minnesota was even more clear, where 174 workers were laid off in 2 rounds, dropping the staff from several hundred to about 85. Side note, this is a factory that was running full shifts during the COVID boom, which tells you how fast the floor dropped out. MasterCraft's yearly report reads like a company in free fall. Revenue dropped 44.6% to $366 million. Net income crashed 90% to $8.7 million, and the operating margin went from 19.9% to 9%, meaning the company kept 9 cents of profit on every dollar instead of 20. On top of that, MasterCraft paid a $9.8 million write-off to walk away from its Aviara luxury dayboat brand entirely, a line that was supposed to push the company into a new market. MasterCraft's answer came in February 2026 with a $232 million purchase of Marine Products Corporation, the parent behind Chaparral and Robalo. Marine Products had already posted a 38% revenue drop of its own. Putting those brands together with MasterCraft and Crest Pontoons creates a company with roughly $560 million in combined revenue, but both halves are still shrinking. Merging 2 companies posting double-digit drops does not create growth, it creates a bigger company carrying the same problems with less room to take another bad quarter. Malibu Boats posted a 40% revenue drop for the full year, landing at $730 million and swung to a net loss of $56.4 million. Fourth quarter, gross profit fell 87.8%. These are high-end wake and water sports boats priced between $60,000 and $200,000, not mass-market products. A buyer taking a loan on a Malibu at 8 or 9% interest is paying hundreds more per month than the same buyer paid in 2021, and that rate gap is pushing a whole class of buyer out of the market. Century Boats is the one that stings. Founded in 1926, Century survived the Great Depression, 2 world wars, the oil crisis, and the 2008 crash that buried dozens of rivals. Plenty of boat owners grew up watching Century sit in slips at their local marina. In early 2025, parent company Alumacraft Marine filed Chapter 11 after the Zephyrhills, Florida factory had already gone dark in December 2024, with the last 13 workers sent home right before Christmas. Every mold, every tool, every design and brand name, all of it sold to American Nautical Holdings for $6 million. For context, that is less than what a single new Viking Sportfisher costs. Catalina Yachts lasted 56 years, shaping what a low-cost American sailboat looked like for whole generations. Production paused in late 2025, and by October the company was kicked out of its Largo, Florida building for not paying rent. Not downsized, not taken over, not bought by a larger company, just kicked out. A builder that spent half a century making sailboats could not cover its lease. Add all 7 up and the picture is hard to argue with. Thousands of jobs gone, hundreds of millions in losses, 2 brands dead, 2 more folded into survival mergers, and 3 others gutting. Their work to stop the bleeding. Total industry spending landed at $55.6 billion in 2024, which sounds healthy until you see that number was $59.3 billion just 2 years before. Close to $4 billion in spending vanished in 24 months. Most people hearing these numbers think this is a normal cycle. COVID created a boom, interest rates killed the boom, and sooner or later things bounce back to where they were. That version of the story feels safe, and it is also badly wrong. Between 2020 and 2021, roughly 800,000 first-time buyers rushed into boating. New powerboat sales hit 320,000 units, a 13-year high, and total industry spending jumped from $43 billion in 2019 to $59.3 billion by 2022. Makers hired thousands, grew their factories, and built up for demand levels that were never going to last. Then, the Federal Reserve raised rates hard. Boat loans jumped from the COVID-era 3 to 4% range to 7 to 11%. Boats now cost 39% more than they did in 2019, and personal debt sits at all-time highs. Those 800,000 first-time buyers who drove the boom largely stopped spending, but every factory upgrade, every new hire, and every dealer floor plan built to feed that demand stayed in place. On the dealer side, the math gets ugly. Most U.S. boat dealers lost money in 2024, with floor plan interest rates hitting 15-year highs after climbing 500 basis points in 2 years. A dealer sitting on 5 boats that average $200,000 each is burning roughly $10,000 a month in floor plan interest alone, and that bill runs whether anyone walks through the door or not. Wallstrom Marine in Harbor Springs, Michigan answered by dropping starter brands like Robalo, Monaco, and Sweetwater to sell only high-end lines like Pursuit, Regal, and Tiara, going after the cash buyer who does not need a loan. Gull Lake Marine shifted hard into pontoons, which outsold towboats 6-1 in 2024. Honestly, these are sharp survival moves, but they are also retreat moves. Every dealer that drops a starter brand is one fewer showroom a middle-class family can walk into and buy a boat. That rate and demand story covers what is happening today. What it does not cover is why this slump carries long-term risk that past dips did not. Boats under 20 feet make up 62.3% of all North American unit sales. That is not a small slice, it is most of the whole market, and it is the exact part where American makers are pulling back fastest. Brunswick's CEO said the company sees weakness in starter products and is looking at trimming those lines while pushing Freedom Boat Club as a different option. Sit with that for a second. The largest boat company in the world is not trying to make cheap boats cheaper. It is telling new buyers to rent instead of own. Once the biggest player walks away from the bottom of the market, the stream of future boat owners starts drying up, and starting that stream again later costs 10 times more than keeping it going now. Across the Pacific, a factory base that dwarfs the American boat industry is watching all of this play out. Chinese boat making was worth $18.6 billion in 2023, growing at 7.3% a year, and Chinese factories turn out over 65% of the world's small to mid-sized boats. Over 2,000 makers work in that space. One plant in Foshan called Kinlife has more than 400 workers across 60,000 square meters and builds 2,000 aluminum boats plus 100 pontoons every single month. That monthly output from one factory beats what many mid-sized American makers build in a full year. And Kinlife lists bare pontoon hulls at shipping prices starting around $6,600. Right now, Chinese brands have almost zero shelf space in American dealerships. Tariffs sitting at roughly 46 to 47% make Chinese boats pricey at the border. No fully Chinese-branded fun boat maker holds NMMA safety stamps, which 90% of boats sold in this country carry, and stamped boats are 7 times less likely to face a Coast Guard recall. Forum posts from boaters who have tried Chinese imports describe wavy hulls, silicone smeared over visible flaws, cheap steel hose clamps, and paint peeling within the first month. Those walls are real and they matter. What makes them less calming is that the pattern for Chinese factories pushing out American ones has already played out 3 separate times. Solar panel output went from 5% Chinese market share to over 80% in 15 years, backed by more than $42 billion in government money that crashed prices and broke roughly 500 foreign rivals. Steel shifted so hard that an estimated 3.7 million American jobs vanished between 2001 and 2018. Electric cars went from 0 Chinese output to 2/3 of global sales in under a decade, with trade groups calling cheap Chinese EVs a threat that could wipe out the American auto industry. Every time the American side said the quality gap was too wide, the brand trust was not there, the trade walls were too high. Every time they were right until the gap closed and the volume hit. Current tariff guards run through November 2026 under the existing US-China trade deal, and after that runs out, the rules are anyone's guess. Recovery signs do exist. Brunswick posted roughly $5.4 billion in 2025 revenue, up about 2%, and the stock climbed from that 52-week low of $41 back to about $87 by early 2026. MasterCraft's purchase of marine products shows at least some companies are betting on merging to ride out the storm. Industry forecasts say that dealer stock should finally match buyer demand during the 2026 model year. There are real reasons to think the bleeding slows. Those reasons do not change the basic math underneath. 95% of boats sold in America are still built in America, and that share has barely moved. The factories behind that number are sending home thousands of workers. The brands behind those factories are posting the worst money results in 15 years, and the average boat buyer in this country is 60 years old, with the age group behind them showing no signs of filling that gap. This is not a bad year that fixes itself. This is an industry shrinking toward a smaller version of itself that serves fewer buyers, builds fewer boats, and hires fewer people. The 7 brands we walk through are not victims of any single force. They are stuck between a demand crash they cannot control and a cost setup built for a boom that ended 2 years ago. Some will merge and survive, others will not. The part of this crisis that almost nobody in the boat world is talking about openly is what happens when these weak companies face real outside rivals for the first time in their history. Tariff walls are not forever. Quality from Chinese plants keeps getting better, with brands like Aquila and Highfield already selling well in the American market, and the output building overseas runs at a scale these companies have never gone up against. That wave has not landed yet, but the companies that will have to face it are weaker right now than they have ever been, and the window to get ready is getting smaller with every quarter of losses and every factory that goes dark. If the factory closures and money damage we just walked through caught your attention, the loan side of this crisis is just as ugly, and it hits buyers head-on. Lenders are quietly changing the rules on boat loans, and most people do not find out until the papers are already in front of them. That full breakdown is right here. Video title topic.